Let's call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Engler,
Here.
Councilmember Newman,
Here.
Councilmember Taylor,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam,
Here.
and Mayor McNamee.
Here. I'd like to turn the meeting over to our City Attorney, Tracy Noonan. Tracy?
Thank you, Mayor McNamee. We do have 3 closed sessions tonight. All 3 of them are conference with legal counsel on pending litigation. First one is Jennifer Quadra versus City of Thousand Oaks. Second is Danielle Williams versus City of Thousand Oaks. And the third one is Romina Nunnally versus City of Thousand Oaks, all pursuant to Government Code Section 94956.9A.
You do that so well. Thank you very much. We will now go into closed session. We'll return at 6 o'clock. All right, let's come on back to session. I'd like to turn the meeting over to our city attorney, Tracy Noonan. Tracy?
Thank you, Mayor Magnamy. Regarding return from closed session, I have nothing to report.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Garrett Beatty to come down to the microphone and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, one of our potential Eagle Scouts. Garrett, come on down. Come on over here. All rise, please.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to your Eagle Scout project coming to completion. We have item 10C, campaign contribution update. It's being requested to be continued to the next meeting. Can I please have a motion to move the item to the next meeting on November 14th?
So moved.
Madam Clerk, would you please call that roll, that vote?
Councilmember Engler,
Yes.
Councilmember Newman,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam, and Mayor McNamee.
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Superb. Thank you. Tonight, before we mark the 5th anniversary of the tragic events at Borderline, I believe it's important to address the unfortunate turn of events that has once again brought our community into national spotlight. It is with a heavy heart that I must share that during a recent public demonstration on Sunday, a regrettable altercation transpired, resulting in the tragic loss of a fellow resident. In these uncertain times, it is vital that we approach this situation with care and prudence. Misinformation and hasty assumptions can swiftly result in discord. Our deepest thoughts and sympathy are extended to the members of the close-knit community who are currently grieving due to the impact of this distressing incident. We recognize the passion and concerns that our residents feel regarding the global events that move them to speak out. Our nation holds dear the principles of free speech and its unwavering commitment to upholding these values. Let us remember the importance of respect for one another, regardless of our differing viewpoints. In these trying moments, I implore all of us to come together, reaffirm the message of unity, and emphasize the significance of responsibility and civility when we exercise our sacred right of free speech. Together, we can navigate these challenging times and ensure the strength and resilience of our community. Any other council comments here at this point, or can I move forward? We good? We also have another special presentation tonight. Today, November 7th, marks the 5th anniversary of one of the most tragic events in our city's history, the mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill. Tonight, the City Council is issuing a proclamation to celebrate the lives of those who were senselessly taken and to recognize the survivors and family members who have been deeply affected, to honor the first responders who selflessly assisted all involved, and to acknowledge the strength of our city as we continue to heal from this tragedy. I would like to present a proclamation about the unfortunate event, and we have a video as a tribute to those who were taken from us. If we can play the video.
I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find the better part of me. it's not easy to be me. I wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to lie about a home I'll never see. It may sound absurd, but don't be naive. Even heroes have the right to bleed. I may be disturbed, but won't you concede? Even heroes have the right to dream, and it's not easy to be me. It's not easy to be me.
Thank you for that wonderful video. May they never be forgotten. Let the healing continue. Let's move to item 8, Madam Clerk.
This is the time and place for public comments. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 11 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I will call up the speakers in order. When there's 15 seconds left, so the person can wind down their comments and conclude on time at the 3-minute mark, I will quietly say 15 seconds. First up, we have Jackson Piper, and again, 3 minutes. Jackson, go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jackson Piper from unincorporated Newbury Park. I'm usually here as a housing activist, but tonight I would like to bring up a topic that matters a lot to me as well. I won't go into detail too much on it because I believe that at least one of the other speakers in the House tonight is going to make a similar statement about it. So I'm asking the city and the City Council to keep in mind streets being not just maintained as they are, but streets being redesigned to promote public safety, especially safety of those not within the protected cage of a automobile. A lot of us have been brought up to see the car as freedom and to see use of the car as sort of an American right. And I do appreciate that. It's very convenient for a lot of uses. However, in some ways we've given over a lot, and when I say I'm talking about American society in general, and especially in communities in Southern California that are developed with the car in mind. We've given over a lot of space in our communities to cars, both in terms of parking and in terms of the transportation networks, the arterial roads and road networks that we use to drive on. And in a lot of ways, this has some negative impacts that don't really get considered a lot of the time, especially in terms of how walkable our communities are. It's very hard to want to walk through, whether you're in a suburb or in a city, walk through a space that has these, multi-ton vehicles speeding by you at 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour or more, without there being any real sense of protection. And I imagine also as, for cyclists who want to use it as a transportation method, not just as a recreational means, trying to cycle on city streets that are filled with other vehicles that are much larger than yours is also a detriment. So I'm asking the council and the city staff to please keep in mind that in order to reach climate change goals, in order to improve the general health of the community, Um,
15 seconds.
we need to we need to address walkability and cyclability within Thousand Oaks and maybe take some space back from cars and protect those other means of transportation. Thank you.
Next up, we have Kevin Snyder. Kevin, you'll have 3 minutes when you begin. Kevin, you there? Well, he was on Zoom. That's why I was wondering. So Kevin, are you on Zoom with us? All right, we'll come back to you if you're there. Next up, we have Shoaib Attar. Shoaib, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead and begin when you're ready. Madam Clerk, are we having problems with Zoom?
Yes.
There we are.
Thank you very much. I am Imam Mohammed Maitia from the Islamic Center of Conejo Valley. Respected and Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and respected audience as well. First, a greeting to one and all. It is sad that we have to meet under these circumstances, and I wish it was under better circumstances that we have met. When I received a call from a local rabbi about Mr. Paul Kessler being in hospital, our board at the Islamic Center of Conejo Valley, Thousand Oaks, immediately went into an emergency meeting. Each of us, including members of our community, remain deeply disturbed by the tragedy faced by Mr. Paul Kessler, the family of Mr. Kessler, as well as the Jewish community. We are very saddened by this tragedy, and we stand in unity with the interfaith community of Ventura County to seek justice for one and all. We stand firmly against any form of aggression or violence aimed towards anyone, regardless of the background or faith, especially in America, and especially as well, including our beloved city of Thousand Oaks and the cities that also surround us. It is of utmost importance to recognize that our religion, faith, Islam, along with other belief systems, vehemently oppose and condemn violence, especially also between neighbors, irrespective of their faith. And we all hold this value in our community that we should come together as a community and reject all forms of violence, continue to advocate peace, and promote open dialogue as a means to resolve our differences. I once again sincerely thank the City Council, including our Honorable Mayor, for giving me and giving our community to share these words on behalf of our Islamic society. Sincerely, we ask God to continually shower His mercy upon us, shower His mercy upon the family that lost this wonderful individual, Mr. Kessler. And again, we ask God Almighty to continue to bless not just myself, but our city and our nation with profound safety and continual security. Again, sincerely, thank you for allowing me to share these words. God bless. Wassalamu alaikum.
Next up, we have Robert Gold. Please step up to the podium. And behind Robert, Michelle Guble. Robert, come on up. You'll go up to the podium. Okay, and who are you? Okay, we go in order as to where we are. So Robert, I got to call you up first because that's what we've got. So Robert, go ahead, come on up. And behind Robert, we've got Michelle Gube. Michelle, come on over and sit behind, so that way you're ready to go when he's concluded. Sir, you have 3 minutes. When you're ready to
Hi, my
begin.
name's Robert Gold. Thank you for letting us speak this evening. I'm going to have to give a little introduction here. I mean, this is a problem that my wife and I have been here for over the years, several times. It's the homeless encampment that's behind the assisted living facility on Hillcrest Boulevard that's been growing over the last several years. It's basically been policed over and over. Police are very sympathetic to our situation. We have 100 seniors living in that facility that are unable to use the public walkway that was built specifically to make a safe and kind of beautiful walk between, I think it's Broadwalk and Moore Park Road, so they don't have to walk on busy Hillcrest Boulevard. This is a vulnerable population. The city has allowed this to kind of go on, and I kind of understand there's sort of everybody, the police, the sheriff say their hands are tied. We get that, and by some legislation. But this is my appeal is that, and my punchline here is that this is a public health hazard, and basically the entire walkway just needs to be shut down. The people who were intended to use it are no longer using it because of safety issues. You have at least 30 to 40 homeless individuals living there. There are, I believe most of them are homeless by choice. You see, when you walk there, you see drug paraphernalia, people shooting up, snorting cocaine, partial overdoses, sanitation issues. Obviously, there's no public sanitation there. Noise issues at night and frequent physical and physical altercations and verbal altercations. This is a vulnerable population. You would never allow a homeless encampment to be next to a school because you have children that are vulnerable. Why is this allowed to be next to a senior facility whose age ranges late 80s and to early 90s, who are just as vulnerable? It makes absolutely no sense. They can't use it. You might as well just shut the whole thing down and solve the problem. The history of this, the walkway was opened several years ago with the intent of people to be able to, as I mentioned before, and it hasn't worked out that way. There's a Lutheran Social Work Center there. It's been there for many decades. It provides food and other social services. It's a great organization. Ironically, as a physician, I volunteered my time there during the 90s. And at the time, we were taking care of low-income families coming in that needed support with medicines. We had samples there. We gave food and
15 seconds.
and clothing. Right now, it's become basically the encampment is as I mentioned before, basically a place where
Thank you,
crime
Robert.
and where drugs are
Next
used.
up, we have Michelle Goulet.
Yeah, the bottom line is.
And after that, we'll have Garrett Beatty right after. And thank you, sir, for your comments. Your 3 minutes is up. Let's bring up the next speaker, Michelle. And then Garrett, if you would go ahead and have a seat behind, that would be excellent. You have 3 minutes when you begin.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle, and I grew up at Hillcrest Royale Assisted Living Community in Thousand Oaks. It's our family business for the last 3+ decades and employs my family as well as many others. I'm also a clinical mental health social worker and work with our residents on a one-to-one basis when they need support. Over the years, the growing homelessness concern has become more and more apparent. Our residents are gravely concerned, and this situation has impeded their quality of life. Many of them went from daily trips walking over to the CVS, being able to use the path available to them, to being frightened and unable to pass a tent city on the sidewalk. Not only are they frightened to use this path, but they are frightened to even go into our parking lot and often into our back patio because of the loud cursing and unleashed dogs that often come in through the gate into our facility. The smell of human waste is absolutely horrendous. This is unacceptable. We are a unique senior community that is called home to our seniors. Right outside our doors has become the new Skid Row of Thousand Oaks. This immense danger that this poses to the seniors is of grave concern. A potential altercation between a well-intentioned resident and a member of this transient population can end up with disastrous consequences and could end in a life-threatening tragedy. Please hear our plea. We cannot wait a year for action. Please close up this path until it is safe to reopen. Thank you.
Next up, we have Garrett Beatty, and after Garrett, we have Inga Jakovic. Inga, go ahead and have a seat behind. I'll call you up shortly. Mr. Beatty, go ahead.
Thank you. So my name is Garrett Beatty, resident of Thousand Oaks, and I wanted to say that every day we see our local first responders going by. We see them going wherever they can to help out, especially responders like Ron Hullis, who served his community very well. We see them go wherever they can, and they help immensely. And sometimes we don't always take note of that. Especially with me, I've had experience myself when in 2021 I had suffered a fatal head injury which required 2 surgeries and the implementation of a prosthetic in my head. And so it's because of all their service and all the goodwill that they do that I would like to put together a First Responders Memorial for them. As you can see here, it is going to,
Mr. Beatty, if you
Yes.
want, city clerk will help you
Oh.
place that so that way it can be viewed by everyone in the audience.
okay. So, the memorial itself is going to look like that. It's going to have the base with the centerpiece, the 3 statues, the flagpole, and I really think it's just a really important thing to help not only inspire the first responders that have helped us so far, but especially as a thank you for all their work, and of course to commemorate those that have lost their lives in it. So currently, in order to build this, I am putting on a campaign called 50 for First Responders, and if I can get 300 donations of $50 or possibly more, I can get this project done. So far, over the past month, I have been able to raise near $9,000. I need $15,000 total. And so with any help that anyone can give here, whether that be a donation, in which I'm going to be sticking around either in here or maybe in the hallway afterward with flyers and business cards to hand out for donations, that would be great. And if you aren't able to donate, that's great. If you could just spread the word and help other people know about this great project that we can get done to help commemorate our first responders, and they can possibly donate, that'd be really good too. So thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Ingra Jehobich, and Audrey Garfunkel is next behind. Audrey, go ahead and have a seat behind. Inga, go ahead and begin when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We kind of went a little bit backwards, but I am the founder of Hillcrest Royale. I have been operating the community for elderly for 34 years. For several years, I have been addressing and standing before you regarding the homeless encampment. We're a small business, and it has become impossible. It's off-putting just to be able to drive in. I drive in every day, and I personally get a trash bag, put my gloves on, and clean the trash that is on our side. You guys, City of Thousand Oaks tries to maintain the community in the back, their walkway. As today, they actually pressure washed it and dispersed everyone. But there is a line. As I was leaving today to attend this meeting, the line was already starting, and they were bringing mattresses and tents. So they were ready to reoccupy. So thank you for at least keeping it clean for a day. I have no choice because of what's going on. I haven't been able to generate any business. None of us here, and I'm not pointing fingers, would ever place your loved ones at the community that provides affordable and quality service. We're the only non-corporate board and care assisted living that is keeping our prices low, trying to accommodate the working class of the citizen, the taxpayers, the retired taxpayers of Thousand Oaks and surrounding areas. And now, my landlord doesn't want to hear that I'm having problem generating new people. I'm having problem marketing my community, because the only place for the potential client to park with their family is in the parking lot. So once they drive in and they see a mess, and even if I cleaned up their bottles, the new bottles are being thrown over, new trash, why would they? That you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
15 seconds.
I just think, please close it off. While they still haven't settled back in, this is a golden opportunity to just, I'm sure CVS would support me and everyone else. Thank you.
Audrey Garfinkel, and after that would be Ashke R. If you'd come on down and have a seat behind, we'll have you come up. Go ahead, begin when you're ready. Go ahead and pull the microphone down just a little bit to your mouth. There you go. You did that well. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Audrey Garfinkel. I've been a resident of Hillcrest Royal for 6.5 years. We have a lovely community. It's not corporate-owned, it's privately owned. And there are times that a lot of residents would like to take a walk to CVS, and we're unable to do so because of all these homeless people out there. I am worried that as a result of it, people come and visit our community, and they love it because it's been recently redecorated. But once they go into the parking structure and they see the homeless, they come back and you don't see them anymore. So my fear is that if the if the ownership does not successfully get residents in, then they will have to close their doors. Now, if they have to close their doors, then I'm worried, where am I going to go? So please, I'm speaking for all the residents at Hillcrest Royal. Please help us with this situation. Thank you.
We have Akshay R., and then after that, we have Madhu Hebar. Madhu, if you go ahead and have a seat right behind. Akshay, go ahead, begin when you're ready.
Hello and namaste, everyone. My name is Akshay Ramachandran, and I am a resident of Thousand Oaks for more than 8 years. I want to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to the Thousand Oaks Library for celebrating Diwali together this year. As a person born and raised in India, Diwali is my favorite festival of the year. This festival of beautiful lights is a time for all of us to get together and share happiness. I'm extremely grateful to the Thousand Oaks Library for taking the initiative to celebrate Diwali. I would also like to thank the library staff and volunteers for all their hard work in planning and organizing this event. Thanks once again to the Thousand Oaks Library and the City of Thousand Oaks for commemorating Diwali. I am very proud to be a part of this wonderful community. Namaste.
Next up, we have Madhu Hebar, and after that, Marianne Rubenstein. Marianne, go ahead and have a seat behind.
Yeah,
Sir,
my
go
name
ahead
is
and
Madhu Hebar. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks since 2005. Currently live in 847 Woodlawn Drive. Already Honorable Mayor mentioned, I just want to remember, today is the anniversary of borderline shooting. I pray for the strength of people who got impacted. World is full of serious crisis, violence, harmony, disharmony, and war. Heard of a death of a citizen of Thousand Oaks, like somebody else mentioned in the earlier call, over the weekend during an altercation not too far from here. I just want to bring some good news on behalf of the Hindu community. Want to share some ideas and activities taken up by the Hindu community in Conejo Valley, Thousand Oaks included. First, thanks to the City Library for arranging a celebration of Deepavali, the festival of lights as it is popularly known. Deepavali celebrates the return of Sri Ram, one of the incarnation of Vishnu, the god in the Hindu pantheon, from Lanka to Ayodhya after 12 years. It is one of the biggest festivals for the Hindus in the entire world. Also, Hindu community of Conejo Valley has organized food drive donations from October 15th, and it goes on till about November 20, because we believe in you start the festival celebration with food donations. Last year, we donated close to 1,000 pounds to Manna Food Bank. Donations were also made to pantries in Moore Park and Simi Valley as well. We hope to overtake last year's achievement because the response by the community has been very great. Thank you for the City Council and the Mayor for including Hindu community by recognizing the festival of Deepavali. I had come here during the month of August and had requested that a proclamation be given for the Hindu Heritage Month. Entire country celebrated Hindu Heritage Month in the month of October, and hundreds of cities across the country gave proclamations for Hindu Heritage Month. Unfortunately, I'm not sure nobody in the Hindu community approached the city council or not, but I didn't see any such proclamation by the city of Thousand Oaks. So I would request to keep this in mind and do the needful in the year to come. Thank you.
Next up, we have Marian Rubenstein. Marian, please, you have 3 minutes when you begin.
Good evening. My name is Marian Rubenstein, and I am the Marketing Director for Hillcrest Royale. We are a family-owned and operated senior community located on Hillcrest Drive off of Moore Park. We are a mom-pop business, not a corporate entity, and have been in Thousand Oaks since 1989. When prospective families contact me, they're looking for a safe, secure home for their parents to age in place. Upon entering our beautiful community through the front door and meeting our staff and residents, they cannot wait to move their parents in. But once they enter our parking lot and see the homeless with their trash, noise, tents, sleeping bags, they want their deposit back. Our community is known for its family vibe. My own mother lives there, and she is too nervous now to walk to CVS by herself through the parking lot. I understand we are all looking for a compassionate solution to this very important issue. Unfortunately, what we do not have is time. Please help us to find a solution so the only family-owned community can remain in business and support our needy seniors. Thank you.
I'll now turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Ingrid Hardy, for a response.
Thank you, Mayor. So with regards to the first comment from the speaker online, the city has added a number of bike lanes, and in fact, there will be an item coming before the City Council next week where we are repurposing lanes for that purpose. We are very much focused on alternative modes of transportation and how we can accomplish that. As you know, we've also added more mixed-use projects to the city's housing inventory. And then also, I'd like to remind the public that the general plan will be coming before the City Council in December. And in that plan, there's a number of guiding principles, goals, and policies to address the very issue that was brought up by the speaker. I would like to thank Shoyab Matar for his comments and for participating in tonight's meeting. And we also had a number of speakers here tonight from Hillcrest Royale. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy evening to be here. I do want to let you know that your pleas are not falling on deaf ears. The City Council staff and also our law enforcement partners are exploring any and all options to address homelessness. And we will continue to have that dialogue. Jeremy and his team have engaged in continued dialogue. There are limits with state and federal laws, but again, I want you to know that we will continue to explore all options available to the city. So I'm going to ask that our Deputy City Manager, Akbar, and our Police Chief, Jeremy Paris, speak with you at the end of public comment. And just thank you to the speakers who commended our library staff for the Diwali events that have taken place this month. And in terms of a proclamation, I'm going to ask that our assistant to the city manager, Melissa Hurtado, step out into the hallway and get your contact information so that the city can be in contact with you on issuing a proclamation in the future. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Are we able to do a retrospective or a proclamation?
A retrospective.
In other words, dated for October of this year, even though we're now in November. Just a thought.
We'll have Melissa have that conversation.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to item 9, consent calendar. Any items to be pulled by council members? Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll need to abstain on the minutes, so I'd like to pull item B, please.
Item B is being pulled. Can I have a motion to move the balance of the consent calendar?
So moved. I'd move the balance of the consent.
Mr. Engler, Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Newman?
Yes.
And Mayor McNamee?
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Very good. Now we'll come back to item B because Mr. Newman is going to abstain. He pulled it. He's not going to be able to make a motion. Could I have a motion from council members regarding item B?
So moved.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam?
Yes.
And Mayor McNamee?
Yes.
And that motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Newman abstaining.
Excellent. We're up to item 10, public hearings. Will the city clerk please open the public hearing?
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 10A.
Excellent. Tonight we have Tara Tasato, did I get that correct? Revenue Operations Manager presenting. We have Finance Director Jamie Boscarino is also available for questions. Ms. Tasato, you're now on for your presentation. Please proceed, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor McNamee and City Council members. My name is Tara Tasato, and I'm the Revenue Operations Manager. This discussion is for our utility rate setting public hearing to establish water and wastewater rates for the next 2 years. Joining me tonight is Kevin Kostick from Raftelis Financial Consultants, who assisted city staff by preparing the financial plans previously approved. Here is a summary of the proposed utility rates for the next 2 years. There is a 3% increase each calendar year proposed for our water service rates, and adding to that amount is a 3.6% for year 1 and 5% for year 2 pass-through rate for our imported water costs. For wastewater, there is an 11% proposed increase for the next 2 fiscal years. The utility financial plans, which provided the framework for these proposed utility rates, were approved by City Council on September 12, 2023. Tonight, we have our public hearing for the next 2 years' rates, which will go into effect for water January 1st, 2024 and January 1st, 2025, and for wastewater July 1st, 2024 and July 1st, 2025. Moving on to more details regarding water rates. Water rates are composed of 2 different components. There is a base rate that is charged regardless of water use, and a variable rate that depends on the quantity used. The base rate is determined by the size of the meter. A 3/4 inch or 5 inch by 3/4 inch meter size is predominantly for our single-family residential customers. Their base rate would increase by 81 cents per month in 2024 and 83 cents per month in 2025, which are 3% increases respectively. This chart shows overall tiered water rates for a single-family residential customer. The amounts you see here include the pass-through rate increases from Cayugas Municipal Water District, which is our imported water supplier. For example, those in Tier 1 would see a 39-cent increase per unit in 2024 and a 50-cent increase per unit in 2025. In addition to tiered rates, the city's water service area is divided into 5 zones. Depending on whether the water needs to be lifted to higher elevations, then a pumping lift charge is assessed. Currently, our pumping lift charge is 41 cents per unit of water. Due to the increases in energy costs and pumping infrastructure maintenance, the proposed rate adjustment for pumping lift charges is an increase of 2 cents per unit per lift in 2024 and 2 cents per unit in 2025. It is important to note how low, moderate, and high usage bills would be impacted. An average residential customer, shown in the middle of the graph, using 15 units of water per month with a 5/8 meter, no pumping lift, would be an increased cost of approximately $6.72 per month. Residents who conserve water and use less than 10 units per month will see even smaller increases. To put this in perspective, the city's average residential water customer would still compare favorably amongst other local water providers. The proposed rate adjustments would place the city in the approximate same standing as previous years. It is important to note that the other water purveyors in Ventura County with lower rates have lower costs due to local, less expensive water sources, such as groundwater and/or reclaimed water. Additionally, the city performs ongoing and timely maintenance on its infrastructure. Other purveyors may not keep their infrastructure maintained to the same standards or on the same maintenance schedule. Now we will cover the wastewater rates. The proposed 11% rate adjustments for each year translate to an average monthly increase of $3.50 for residential customers per month in July of 2024 and $3.89 in July of 2025. This chart shows the city's current and 2024 proposed monthly wastewater service rates compared to other agencies in our area. Overall, despite our expansive and highly modern and efficient infrastructure, the overall monthly rate for our single-family residential customer is the lowest wastewater rate in the county. The proposed wastewater rate adjustment has no change to the ranking order as our current rates. This year's rate process also includes adjustments to development connection fees, which are new connections to the water and/or wastewater systems. Per Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, connection fees are currently adjusted biannually by council action to reflect changes in construction costs. Adjustments are based on Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index for Los Angeles. Over the past 2 years, the cost index has increased 15.9%, equating to the proposed increased fees starting in January 2024. For water, the proposed fee is $10,280, and for wastewater, the proposed fee is $11,135. Connection fees mitigate the financial impact of development on our existing customers, and these one-time fees apply only to new construction. In addition to the water and wastewater rate and ordinance updates, the city is proposing updates to the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code related to the 2 specific topics, monthly billing and street sweeping. First, let's talk about monthly billing. There are numerous reasons why monthly billing is a best practice, including smaller, more regular bills, but specifically to get information to our customers regarding their water use in a more timely fashion, which aids in conservation efforts and leak mitigation. The city has been planning the conversion to monthly billing for the last few years. City staff has been working diligently to align operations with monthly billing to account for additional impacts of processing utility payments monthly instead of every other month. First, wastewater was sent to be collected on the county property tax, which saved 18,000 additional mailings per month and alleviated staff workloads from calls, account maintenance, and delinquent collection follow-up. Second, printing was outsourced to a high-speed processor who could ensure timely delivery. Third, delinquent notices are now delivered via FedEx to the property, saving field staff time, and we are now able to track when the notices are delivered. Fourth, the city's billing system is ready for conversion to monthly billing. City staff is continuing to evaluate internal processes to improve meter reading and billing efficiencies. Major changes to the billing process will include the bills being due 21 days after creation. There will still be a 7-day grace period before penalties apply. Payments must be received by the 28th day. This timeline still complies with the SB 998 requirements. Another update to the municipal code is the street sweeping section, which includes clarifying the definition and billing method. Street sweeping under this article is only for the exclusive solid waste franchise agreement awarded by the city. Starting January 1st, 2024, the city will bill on a fixed rate per year rather than each month based on consumption. I also wanted to take the opportunity to provide a brief update on our Utilities Assistance Program. Just over 6 years ago, City Council approved the development of a residential assistance program for low-income water and wastewater customers. We are currently at 36% capacity for water and 24% capacity for the wastewater. The program has been well received, and we have room for more customers who meet the eligibility criteria for this assistance. No changes to the program are recommended at this time. In summary, our recommendations are to first, conduct tonight's public hearing. Second, receive the report from City Clerk on Proposition 218 protests. Third, to adopt the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code updates. And if no majority protest is received, fourth, to adopt the water and wastewater fee ordinances. Staff is available should you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your report. You mentioned the utility assistance program for low-income residents who might have difficulty otherwise meeting these proposed hikes. What are the qualifications for the UAP? Is it based on household income, or how does that work?
It is based on household income. Our qualification for the UAP program is you need to be eligible for the CARE program offered by the Public Utilities Commission. There is household income limits, but it does take into consideration local programs like CalFresh and CalWorks.
And that's a perfect segue to my other question, which is, are there, in addition to the UAP, are there other assistance programs available to ratepayers who might have difficulty?
We do have a program called LIWAP we subscribe to. That one has different income requirements, and it's facilitated through the Ventura County Community Action Program. This is still a low-income program to qualify for. The good thing about the Ventura County Community Action is they take one application for each person and actually applies it to all of the utilities that they could possibly qualify for. So it's not just our city. This program also grants up to $15,000 for arrearages and potentially future bills as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? No. I have a few. Just to clarify, the drinking water rates, we have 3 purveyors for distribution. The source is Callegas. That goes to 3 different purveyors. And are these only just the rate increases for the City of Thousand Oaks water, or is it all 3?
It's just for the City of Thousand Oaks water customers.
Conversely, the wastewater side, we handle 100% of the wastewater from the city side, correct?
That is mostly true.
Mostly true. There's probably a
Mostly
few
true. There's some
exceptions
small
somewhere in there.
ones.
All right, very good. The reason why I'm asking is that we're looking at $6.72 unit for water. What is a unit? Are we talking a gallon? Are we talking CCF? What are we talking as? What do you want to define as a unit?
Yeah, Mayor McNamee, this is Nader Haidari, city engineer. The 1 unit is 100 cubic feet of water,
Okay.
748 gallons.
Got it. We have also the wastewater side. When was the last time we had a rate increase from the city for wastewater?
Yeah, we had one that was effective July 1st, 2023.
Okay, and we're looking at, as you said, a household, $3.50 per month. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Because I've had some residents complain about this wastewater rate increase, and I'm reflecting on the idea of gasoline has gone from $2.50 a gallon now up to $6 a gallon, times 20 gallons per week, times 4.33 weeks, and they're complaining about $3.50 per month. Why are we even increasing the wastewater? What's the rationale as to why we're increasing the rates, other than we can?
Thanks, Mayor McNamee. There are several reasons that we are proposing an increase in our wastewater rates. One being our revenue requirements right now are not projected to be enough to meet all of our operating expenses and our capital expenses. We do have a significant capital program that is planned over the next 5 years, and that is shown in our financial plans. We did a wastewater master plan and a Hill Canyon treatment plant master plan, and that showed a lot of projects on the capital side that need to be completed in order to keep our infrastructure maintained properly so that we don't have any issues with any wastewater flow, any flows or anything that we don't want to have happening. So a lot of it is on the capital side because we do have significant capital expenses over the next 5 years.
So essentially, we're starting now to have everyone pay a smaller portion as compared to it's going to hit for that maintenance next year. We needed to do a large jump for everybody. Is that the approach we're using?
Yeah, it's a measured increase. We're doing the next 2 years, projected for the next 5 years, 11% per year. We're sort of flattening out that increase that is proposed over the next 5 years. I do want to mention also we have had significant increases on the operating size, just like we've seen. You mentioned, fuel. Our chemical costs have increased dramatically, and that is a necessary component for our treatment plant to have chemicals to treat all of the wastewater that comes in at the treatment plant. We've also seen other really high increases across the board on all of our operating expenses that, we have to increase rates in order to pay for those.
Mr. Hadar, would you, as the senior engineer, is it better to then deal with preventive maintenance now as compared to dealing with it when it's broke?
Yes, that is absolutely correct, and I think that is borne out by looking at some of the other wastewater rates around the county where they're double or triple or quadruple of what ours are, and those, in many cases, were the result of deferred maintenance, which wound up causing them to almost have to either build a brand new wastewater treatment plant or, make some significant upgrades all at once.
From my background, again, teaching wastewater and water treatment, to have the lowest rates and the high reliability of our plants, it's quite a testament to the management there and leadership there from the engineering side. So congratulations. I do remember a story where there was once before City Council years ago, a request from Project Works to increase the size of one of the wastewater pipes that needed to be repaired and replaced. And unfortunately, Council did not move forward with that request. And shortly thereafter, the pipe burst. We had wastewater flowing down towards the Hill Canyon plant from this break. And the EPA came in and wanted to fine the city $100 million. That wound up getting negotiated down, all because the council did not move forward with, what's the saying? Penny saved is a penny earned, and spend the dollar now and not pay a lot later on. So again, my applause and my thanks to you guys for doing such a great job. Is there any other questions from council on this? Mr. Engler?
Just to echo some of what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. And by the way, if you're paying $6 a gallon for gas, we need to talk. But for a number of years, I think we were flat in our approach on any kind of increases. So that went on for 10, 12 years earlier in this century. So I think during that time, inflation in what we were doing was, don't quote me, 63%, and our rates only increased by 20-something%. So I think, unfortunately, now we're faced with needing to catch up a little bit on these things. And it falls to us to make that decision and bite the bullet now to be able to do these necessary upgrades and maintenance.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes,
sorry,
go ahead.
just add one additional comment that our rates are based on the cost of doing business. So we are legally prohibited from profiting off of our wastewater system. So I just wanted to remind the public of that as well.
Well, if you look at, and again, I appreciate that comment, because if you look at Oxnard, for example, is having a battle with their wastewater digester, and they have 3 of them, and 2 of the ones I've seen have leaks happening, and they're trying to find funds to repair it. Mr. Nader Hadar, am I correct in that statement?
I'm not fully up to speed on their current capital project needs in Oxnard right now.
You're
but
very
I would
diplomatic.
imagine you're correct.
You're very diplomatic. I can tell you that they do have some issues there, and it's been in the press for about the last 5-7 years. That said, let's move on to open the public testimony. Additionally, I'd like to ask the public if they have any remaining written protests, please present them to the city clerk Ms. McGuire. So any public testimony or any public comment, Ms. McGuire?
None.
None? Okay. So no public speakers, so there will be no responses. Council, any further questions before we move forward? Mr. Newman?
Is this, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification, is this still questions or is this comment period?
It's question time right here. I haven't closed the
I have
portion
no
for
further
that.
questions. Thank you.
Very good. Prior to closing the public hearing, I'm going to give you one last call for any written protests. Once the public hearing is closed, then there will be no further written protests that will be accepted. No others? Okay. Public hearing is now closed. Will the city clerk please provide results of the tabulation? If you're going to present you have to come down and present it to the city clerk. And we'll wait while you come on down. Please, don't trip.
I just wanted to.
We'll wait for a moment while he lodges his protest. And it's supposed to be in writing? Any other written protests? Okay.
He has a general question about
Well, why don't
some
you-
follow-up. So.
Why don't you go ahead and step up and, we'll have you fill out a comment card afterwards, but go ahead, you've got.
Okay. My name's Alan Grant. I live at 825 Old Farm Road, Thousand Oaks. And I had a question for the water department. I was just curious. Whatever happened to that lawn sprinkler monitoring program where they hired one person and they were monitoring how we used our water, and they were looking at the people that were watering their lawns too much? Like I'm not going to say who it is, but in my neighborhood, I have a person that turns on their sprinkler, and I'm like 10 houses down the road from them, and I can launch paper boats in the gutter. So I was wondering whatever happened to that.
Yeah, I can help address that question. The drought level obviously has dropped. However, there are still, and so therefore we don't have the proactive intensity of the monitoring that we did have during the height of the drought. However, many of the items you're alluding to are still, water waste and irrigating into the street and into the gutters is still prohibited. So I can follow up with you after the meeting and work on that.
That's great.
Thank you.
You'll find city staff to be very proactive on that. So we are closing the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, would you please provide the results of the tabulation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the results are as follows. The total number of notices issued by the city for the proposed water rate increase was 15,461. We received 12 valid protests. Based on the results, there are insufficient protests received for a majority protest, as 7,731 protests were required for a majority. The total number of notices issued by the city on the proposed wastewater rate increase was 20,520. 37 valid protests were received. Based on these results, there are insufficient protests received for a majority protest, as 10,261 protests were required for a majority.
Thank you. Council, now we're at the discussion phase. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. It may not have come anywhere close to the threshold, but I did receive multiple comments from residents, especially residents on fixed income, about the 11% hikes with wastewater increase. And I want to respond to that and make 3 quick points. Number one, if you are on a fixed income, there are assistance programs available. Staff alluded to two programs. There are income qualifications for those, but they do help. One of them, if my math is correct, provides a 14% discount this year in billing. And there's also another second countywide program. So I would encourage you, if you are concerned about that or need help in dealing with these increases, there are assistance programs available. Reach out to staff for more information on those. That's point one. Point two is there was some confusion among residents as to why 11%. Multiple residents came to me and asked, well, is the inflation rate right now, currently in the past month, was 3.7%, so why is it 11%? And the 3.7% is a national average of many different items. It doesn't refer to the price of everything. Individual items such as wastewater may be higher or lower than that 3.7% average. In our case, unfortunately, it's higher. We are required, as Ms. Hardy mentioned, we are required by law to set rates based on the city's actual cost. And our costs have increased much more than 3.7%. For wastewater treatment, just for the chemicals alone, Mr. Hidari had mentioned in a previous hearing that just the chemical costs for that, the city's costs have increased 82% in the past year, not 3.7%. So there are many different components. We're not pulling that 11% number out of thin air. It's based on our actual costs. And that brings me to my final point, which is something the mayor alluded to in his exchange with Mr. Hidari, which is that it is much less expensive to do the preventive maintenance now than to deal with the costs of some breakage on an emergency basis. That's a much worse and much more costly outcome for all residents. So no one likes to have costs increase for anything. We should have price stability for everything. That would be good. But for all these reasons, I think this is the most prudent approach. So I'm happy supporting this, and I'm also happy to see there are assistance programs available for folks who need that help. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council member comments, discussion? I'd just like to point out there's a wonderful book out there called How Numbers Can Lie. And if I told you that rates went up 100%, oh my God, that's such a huge amount. But if you go from $1 to $2, that's a 100% increase, but it's not that significant. So my challenge is when people start talking about percentages, let's look at the raw number. When you're talking $6.72, it's not much. Like I say, you spend more on the gasoline costs that have gone up to put it in your vehicle. And this is rather minimal. And we're at the lowest rates in Ventura County for a long time. And that's a definitely tribute to the management and the wonderful workers, city employees we have there at the wastewater plant. So thank you. So if there's no other council discussion, I entertain a motion.
I would move staff recommendations.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember Newman?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam?
Yes.
And Mayor McNamee?
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0. And I have two ordinance titles to read. Ordinance adjusting and setting rates and fees of City Water Division, uncodified, and amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code Title 10 Utilities, Chapter 2 Water. And ordinance adjusting and setting rates and fees of City Wastewater Division, uncodified, and amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code Title 10 Utilities, Chapter 1 Wastewater.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to 10B, revised precise plan to design guidelines to allow metal roof materials in residential zones. Madam Clerk, would you please open the hearing?
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 10B, revised precise plan of design guidelines to allow metal roof materials in residential zones, PCP 2022-70669. Speakers are requested to state their name for the record. One person has presented a speaker card, and pursuant to council standards, that person is allowed 5 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. From Planning Division Manager Stephen Kearns. Mr. Kearns, it's yours.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor McNamee and members of the City Council. As mentioned before you this evening is consideration of revisions to the city's precise plan design guidelines to allow metal roofing in residential zones. Currently, the PPD guidelines that are in place were adopted in 2006. Recently, we had a request on June 30th, 2022 by Mike Sandiford, Pacific Metal Roofing, to allow metal roofing in the PPD guidelines for single-family homes. The PPD guidelines are used for review of architectural design for certain buildings, including residential. This includes building materials, which also calls out for roof materials, that they must show shadowing and dimension on the roofing, and allows for heavy-grade metal composition shingles, clay, concrete tile, and simulated wood shakes. This resolution goes on to discourage certain design elements, homes that are not compatible with other homes in material and design, and bright, shiny, or non-textured metal materials. According to the applicant, metal roofs, particularly standing seam, have gained popularity and demand has risen, although the city has received few requests for metal roofs in residential areas. However, the applicant does believe that the demand exists in the city, and therefore he requested amendment to our precise plan design guidelines. Typical metal roofing types, there are several. We have metal roofs that mimic or simulate wood shake, concrete slate tile, composition shingles, or S-tiles, or barrel tiles. These next few images will depict some metal roofing materials that simulate materials that are typically seen in residential areas. Shown here is a metal material that simulates wood shake. In this image is a concrete slate tile. It's composed of metal, but does simulate that style. This is a metal material that simulates composition shingle. And shown here is a metal material that simulates concrete S-tile. Now, the crux of why we're here this evening is the applicant is seeking for the city to allow standing seam metal roofs in residential area. Currently, these are allowed in non-residential areas. You can see them up and down the boulevard. There are several commercial sites that do have the standing seam metal roofs. They're installed typically with a 12 to 20-inch panel section. And then at that 10 to 20-inch section, there'd be a seam or a rib, which extends about 1.5 inches to 2 inches vertically. Between that, the flat surface area connects with at that seam and the interlocked with the adjacent panel. Now, these seams do two things. They're functional, that they actually fasten the roof material to the subsurface, as well as interlock the roofing system together. But it also breaks up the expanse of the flat metal surface area. So we do get some architectural dimension provided by these seams. This is an image of a standing seam metal roof. As you can see, there are the ribs or seams of flat expanse and then another seam. So they do provide some architectural interest and some dimension. In order to allow the standing seam metal roof, the revision to the precise plan design guidelines would be necessary to adopt a change to the building materials section, particularly the section that pertains to roofing materials. Part of the amendment would require an allowance of metal roofing as an addition to the clay, concrete, wood, or composition shingle allowance. And then it would introduce a new section. Because metal roofing and standing seam metal roofing is not allowed now, that section does not exist. So it would require establishment of a new section for standing seam metal roofs, which would establish objective standards for installation of these materials. Now, how would this change apply to existing entitlement conditions? Because we do have existing entitlement conditions that specify specific roofing materials for geographic areas and tracts and residential plan developments, HPD, hillside plan development zones. Most of the areas that are not in those two zones do not have specific roofing standards and rely on this precise plan design standard for consideration of roofing materials. In the RPD and the HPD zones, there is an explicit roofing material condition. Those zones are designed to have specific design review and design criteria established. And part of that does require roof materials, and the typical condition is that it should be concrete, clay, or wood shake materials. Subsequently, in 1985, wood shake was replaced with composition shingle. If the change was adopted, it would allow metal roofs in all residential areas, including those within homeowner association areas. However, this change would not usurp the homeowner association's ability to regulate the roof materials or any exterior change in their area. And as part of a matter of practice, in consideration of a building permit, staff would require that the applicant provide evidence that the HOA approved the new metal roofing material on their dwelling. As far as fire safety is concerned, the Ventura County Fire Protection District and the building codes require roofing systems to have a Class A fire rating in high fire severity zones. Now, to put that in context, about 46% of our residences in the city are in that zone. However, after the Woolsey fire and the Hill fires, the city adopted a regulation requiring that the Class A fire rating is applicable to all residences in the city, regardless of their location. Now, what that means is the Class A roof system is the highest fire resistance according to the American Society for Testing Materials and the Underwriters Library. So metal roofing, if installed in the city, must abide by the Class A fire rating and be designed as a system that meets that standard. So to summarize, if adopted, metal roofing would be allowed in residential zones, including those within specific roofing material requirements and areas regulated by homeowner associations, as an allowable material. The roofing material would be required to meet the Class A fire rating. It would be required to comply with the metal roofing design standards that would be adopted as part of the Precise Plan Design Guidelines. Those create those objective standards for the separation between the seams, the fire rating, and other design standards. And the metal roofing allowance would be subject to approval by any applicable homeowner association for that development area. Where staff is recommending that the City Council adopt revisions to PPD guidelines, thereby allowing metal roofing in the residential zones. In doing so, adopt the resolution modifying the applicable sections of the Precise Plan Design Guidelines, and find that this action is not a project as defined by the California Environmental Quality Act. This concludes staff's introduction, and staff is available for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Council, questions for staff? Mr. Engler?
Yeah, just want to go a little bit over the fire rating and whatnot. Currently, most of our roofs that we have in town already are Class A, is that correct? And required to be Class A?
That's correct. They're all required to be going forward as of 2018.
This alternate roof covering, if properly installed, would also have a Class A?
That's correct.
Okay. There was one slide you had there at the beginning, talked about the roofing being incompatible with residences in the area. How can you explain that a little bit more? In other words, if a metal roof comes into a neighborhood, if it's the only one, it would be incompatible, so to speak. How do we work the code to reflect that?
That is correct. Because metal roofing or the standing seam metal roofing is not a permitted roofing material now in residential areas, any introduction of a metal roofing would be incompatible with the existing roof material. That's just goes without saying. Over time, there'd be a blend of roofing materials, and perhaps the metal roofing would catch up. But in most developments, we do see more than one roofing material. There's not just all comp, or there's not all tile. There's a mixture of roofing materials in most residential developments now. So this is a request to allow just an additional material to be considered as part of their home redesign or a preference for their home.
Is there a requirement of this to be only in contemporary designed homes, or in other words, if there's a Spanish revival, this type of roof would not be approved, or would it be to the owner's option?
That's actually a very good question and a point I should have clarified in the beginning. There was a supplemental. The initial packet contained a standard that required the roof material to be a certain design, architectural design, contemporary or postmodern or mid-century modern. We're no longer recommending that. We're recommending that it be applicable to all architectural styles as long as the roof material, of course, is compatible. And we will use our discretion in reviewing the roof materials when they come through the building permit process.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns.
If I may just follow up on that question that Councilmember Engler had. The original rationale was that the metal roofs that came out years ago aesthetically did not hold up to what our standards are here in the city. The industry has caught up to where they look, to me, from the photographs you showed, identical to the natural product or material. And that's why we're entertaining this, because you wouldn't be able to discern between a metal roof versus a composite roof or whatever the case may be, because they're looking the same. Is that why we're coming back to this?
That is most of the equation. There is the standing seam metal roof, which is the outlier, which does not mimic the materials that we would typically see in a residential area, the wood shake, the composition shingle, the tiles, the slate materials, the flat concrete tiles. The standing seam would be an introduction of something that is somewhat of a departure. It'd have flat surfaces, have ribs every 20 inches or so, which would not look like any of those materials I just described, but is something that the City Council is asked to consider this evening.
So it's something that, again, at the discretion to see if it's compatible with the community or the neighborhood, that would be acceptable. Is that what we're saying here?
That's correct.
Leave it as an option, but it's not guaranteed.
Absolutely, yes.
And just for my own understanding, when you speak of steel, when it rains, is it a lot louder on the inside of the house as compared to the traditional roofs that we have?
I will let the applicant address that. However, this material, it's half a millimeter thick, so it's not very thick. So I mean, I'm not sure how much noise that actually creates, but I will let the applicant. I'm sure this question he receives.
Okay, now I'll also ask the applicant a question about weight compared to steel versus the other, and that'd be good one. Mr. Engler, I heard a grunt over here.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit of what you're saying. Currently, we do allow metal roofs that mimic other surfaces, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So this is strictly the sheet, the rib sheet metal that we're being talked about here.
Yeah, the main item this evening is the standing seam metal roofs. That's correct.
Any other questions from council? We have one speaker. We have Paul McCullen, and you have 5 minutes. Please come on up to the microphone, and hopefully you'll shed some light on the questions we just asked. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a homeowner in Thousand Oaks. I live at 115 Los Padres Drive, which is off the south end of Moore Park Road, and I face the Los Padres open space on the other side of the road. I've wanted a standing seam metal roof for a long time. Somebody asked about weight. I actually did the math. It'll take 38,000 pounds off the roof of my house the moment I put it on there, and make it that stronger and that more durable in an earthquake. I actually run a medical practice that manages about 2,400 of the most complex patients in this region. So we spend a lot of time thinking about infrastructure. And I look at my house, and I look at the open space across the street, and I look at the trees which are starting to grow at the bottom of the hill across the roadway. And instead of 50 and 60 feet of separation between the wildlands and the homes in my neighborhood, at the bottom of the hill, we're down to about 12 feet of space. So I would like to do everything I can to make sure that my home not only is protected for myself, but also doesn't encourage the spread of a wildfire into my neighbors' homes behind me. And the more I look at it, this is as close as I can get to an ideal answer. I'd be more than happy to pick a color that matches and blends in with all the Spanish tile houses around me. And I like the standing seam because that'll also allow me to put solar array on there very easily and make it strong, well-supported, and easy to update in the future as we go forward. That's all I have to say. Any other questions?
I have one question. What is the cost analysis based on traditional versus what you're trying to do here?
It's slightly more expensive, but it's got enough in terms of benefits, and the longevity is dramatically greater. So I won't have to redo the roof in my lifetime, and maybe not in that of the next child that takes over the house, if that's where it goes.
You're a good salesman for the product. Mr. Newman, any other questions by council? Super. We have one more speaker. Thank you, sir. Mike Sanford, you have 5 minutes. Come on up, Mike.
Good evening, City Council. Mike Sanford. I moved to this wonderful city in 1994, brought my business with me. We've been in business since 1988. All we do is metal roofing and metal siding. We've been doing it with a Google 5-star rating. We have no other rating except that. Just a little background on us. During that period in this town, I have not been allowed to install metal roofing on residential, although I did the metal roofing at the Hill Canyon Treatment Plant. So I got one job here. I've been paying my license faithfully. I've been working 2 years to get to this point to discuss this with you. Standing seam metal roofing used to be about 10% of the market. It's getting close to 20% and going up fast. We have 8 houses that were in the burn area in Malibu. Houses all around them burned down. Not one of our houses that we installed a metal roofing burned down. It's a Class A rated fire rating. We put on top of that, or below it in essence, a fire rated underlayment so that you have a double Class A fire rating on our roofs. I have no recollection in my 30 years of ever losing a house to a fire. When we had people call me up on the phone, and it's frequent, Paul was one of them, wanted a metal roof, and I said, well, they don't allow metal roofing in Thousand Oaks. They all look at me like, why? And who came up with this? And to give you a really brief history of why I think it is, riding through the desert with some of my friends, coming across shacks with corrugated metal on them, rusting, that was the definition of metal roofing. That's what they thought it was. And I think way back when this was all established, that's what Thousand Oaks and many other people think it is, which is not anywhere near the truth of the matter. As I'm sitting up here listening to your questions, I have all the answers. I've been doing it for 30 years, and I give you answers to any question you have on the steel, the weight, everything else right here. I want to talk one other point before I end my section, and that's this. In the ordinance they're talking about on page 11 and on page 15 on the resolution is talking about what not to use. And they said the following roofing materials are prohibited. And A is corrugated metal. This is the stuff that everybody has this idea in their mind about how terrible this corrugated stuff is. But the reality is, it has a very good and purposeful reason to use it. Frank Gehry, who many of you might know, designed Disney Hall and everything else. We did his house, and he specified corrugated metal on his house. If you have a house that has something that's more of a rustic look, maybe wood and everything, corrugated is the way to go. It's not a bad-looking thing, and I have some pictures with me I'd be more than happy to share with you to show you some really nice projects that are done with corrugated. I have a whole website of the jobs we've done, but I brought those with me just so you can see the quality and what corrugated looks like, so you don't just eliminate it in your mind as far as that goes. I don't think I have anything else to add to this, but I think I heard the thing about the weight. There's very few things that weigh less than metal roofing. It weighs just a fraction over a pound a square foot. It's lighter than almost anything else you can put up there. It lasts 50 years easy. They don't know how long it lasts because the roofs they're putting on now haven't been around long enough to deteriorate. There's virtually no deterioration. They're green rated, so they're cool roofs, so there's no problem there. They are more expensive, like solar panels up front, but once you get them on there, you got a 50-year roof, and then actually over the lifetime of the roof, it will be a much lower rate. Be honest with you, a 50-year warranty is going to take it way past my warranty period. but it's still worth the investment in the house because it never goes down. The house will fall apart before the roof does. One last thought about wind and noise, you said. If you have skylights in your house and it rains, you might hear some noise in the skylights. If you had, I'm thinking ice. What's hail? Thank you. Hail. Okay. You have hail drop down, makes noise. The roof is not buffeted by substrate of plywood or OSB board, and virtually no noise gets through. If you hear a lot of noise,
15
light
seconds.
some candles and enjoy it.
Any other questions for the gentleman here? Mr. Newman?
Yes, sir. The previous speaker alluded to ease of installation of rooftop solar as a reason to go with metal. Could you speak to the relative ease or difficulty of solar panels on metal versus other roofing materials?
Absolutely. On a metal roof, on a standing seam, they have a special clip that goes over the standing seam. The racks fit on that, and the solar panels go on those racks. What that means is that a solar company can come in, they can install the entire roofing system, solar system, without penetrating the roof, which means they don't do anything to the warranty that's on the roof. So there's no penetrations. It's probably the preferred kind of roof that most solar companies would like to have because they don't have to worry about it getting a leak in the roof. They don't have to worry about penetrations. And it's easy to just put these clips on, put the racks on the top clips, and that's it.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
One other thing on that, too, is that solar panels last about 30-plus years, say 32 years. If you get solar panels and you put them on a typical roof that has a lifespan of 20 years, you're going to have to take all those solar panels off when you replace them, put it back on again. Just a thought.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Engler?
Thank you, sir, for coming in and explaining some stuff to us. Appreciate it. The question I have is, and I realize that metal roofs are Class A, and a lot goes into being a Class A is the installation that's done. I trust that you have the best installation that would preserve that Class A rating throughout. You're doing the undermain Class A and everything. How does just the standard metal roof, say, not so much your installation, but a standard seamed metal roof, how does that Class A compare to, say, concrete tile or S-tiles or some other type of Class A rating that has, concrete S-tiles have about a 50-year rating too?
There's no Class A rating better than a standing seam metal roof. The problem with the other ratings, like your tile roofs, they still have a space. If a spark gets underneath there, that's how they catch on fire. If one of our houses catch on fire, we had one garage that caught on fire in the Woodley fire. There's a roof we just put on, it had to be copper. And the reason the garage caught on fire was they had a big wood pile on the side of it. And the reason the roof got destroyed is because the fire department came along and banged a bunch of holes in the roof. We had to go back and repair to let the smoke out. That's the only repair. That's the only thing I can remember that there's a problem with the metal roof. It has so much. It's a strong Class A.
Well, being an old firefighter, I understand the damage firefighters can sometimes do. I'm trying to get to, if we were to allow this type of roofing in town, is there a particular advantage to this Class A rating as opposed to other ones? You did mention that S-tiles and concrete tile do have gaps that occur. That's not an issue with
No, there's no
the metal roof?
There's no way for sparks to get underneath the roof, and that's usually where the roof gets on fire. So it's with tile roofs, they start out as a Class A. A tile roof generally puts down like an 80-pound roof, roll-out roof, and then they put the tile on top of that. And then what happens is people will, over time, walk on that roof and crack the tiles. And once the tile is cracked, the Class A rating is deteriorating because it now opens up the space for fire to get in there. Can't happen with a metal roof, and you can walk on a metal roof without a problem.
Just Mr. Adam, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I can't say I've seen many seam metal roofs around the city. You've installed these before?
First, there's none in this city. There's the library. Thousand Oaks Library has a metal roof on it.
Just
It seemed
commercial.
like they had a lot of leaks from what I understand. We didn't install it, sorry about that. The Armstrong Nursery has a metal roof. We did not install that one. We did, the only one I can think of that we did in this town, and there really isn't any metal roofs in this, directly in this town. They have it in Westlake area, they have it in, we've installed in Lake Sherwood area. Because there's little pockets that are allowed to have metal roofing. They're not directly in Thousand Oaks. But in Thousand Oaks proper, we can't do it.
Right, right. Staff suggesting that these seam metal roofs only go on modern or contemporary architecture. No?
No, not at all, not at all. It's, again, you're thinking in your mind, these straight lines and everything. I wish I could put my website up on these television sets. You can just look through them and see what they have on it. Or I can show you the corrugated ones, the different styles. We did a metal roof on an English Tudor house. And when I started this project and looked at it, I said, this is the craziest thing I ever thought in my life to put a metal, but it looked fantastic at the end of the whole thing. So it really goes along with any type of pattern, any kind of roof you have out there. When it's finished, it's a very contemporary look on the roof. And it'll go with virtually any house out there.
Okay, thanks.
Let me come back to my understanding of this is that metal roofs in Thousand Oaks city staff was that we didn't approve that because the quality of the aesthetics, as one of the many reasons it was not approved here in Thousand Oaks for metal roofs, correct?
I wasn't at that meeting.
No, hold on. This is for city staff. You're doing well. You weren't even born then when they did this decision.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The initial, well, I can go way back. The initial precise plan design guidelines were adopted in 1969. They were amended in 83, again in 2003, and so forth until we have the current iteration, which is in place now, adopted in 2006. The quality of the metal roofing at the time when they were considering these wasn't the same as it is now. So there's better styles of metal roofing, the longevity of the application, and the fire rating. It's all better than it was then. There was a desire, and actually, Mr. Sanford and I have been in communication for the last 20 years, off and on, about metal roofing in the community. And we got to a point where the quality was there, where we could actually get behind something and recommend a change to City Council from the precise plan design guidelines. So you're absolutely correct. The quality just wasn't there to the City of Thousand Oaks standards, and we think it is now.
So to follow up is that the quality has improved. The aesthetic look has improved because I saw those pictures there, and if I drove by that, I would not know if that was concrete composite or if that was actually a metal roof. Is that an accurate statement that the aesthetics look spot on for the other products that are out there right now?
Except for the standing seam itself. That's an
That's a whole different look unto itself. Yes, I follow.
So yes, Mayor, in regard to the simulated materials, they absolutely look identical. It's hard to tell, especially for a passerby. You know, if you're not there staring at the roof, you wouldn't know the difference.
So it's better fire rated, lower weight, costs more but lasts 50 years. Maintenance is rather minimal on it. The material does very, very well over time. Aesthetically, it looks identical to what we have out there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say someone has a composite roof. They're able to put a metal roof on that looks composite today without staff saying, no, you can't do that. Is that correct?
That's correct for the simulated materials, but I want to be clear that one of the materials we're talking about tonight is the standing seam metal roof, which does not simulate any of those materials you just mentioned.
Are we going to include other steel metal roofs designs that we can use here in the city in addition to that, or just the seam?
It would be copper roofs, the simulated materials, shake, tile, S-tile, the slate tiles, and the composition. Those simulated materials, but the copper materials are also being proposed because we do get requests for that. Primarily as accent features. In my experience, we've never had a request for a full primary roof as copper, but we included it in any event.
Of course, we're not going to get any requests because it was never a possibility.
Sure.
So now we're opening up that possibility here. So yes, one of the challenges I have with government is that we keep doing it because that's the way we've always done it. And this is the reason why we should go back and analyze it. And I thank the staff for moving forward with this. Any other questions for this gentleman? We're good?
I got just one last thing.
Go ahead.
It comes, you can get it in steel, which actually they call Galvalume. You can get aluminum, zinc, or copper. And if you're really going to go all out, we'll go in titanium for you.
Just in case, keep the
Just in case
radiation. That nuclear bomb that hits and the electromagnetic pulse doesn't come through the house. I got you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mike. So staff, any comments regarding public comments here? Thank you, Mike. You're all done.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One clarification on Commissioner Adam, or Councilmember Adams' comment regarding the architectural design. There was a supplemental that was distributed to the City Council this afternoon. That was a correction to the limitation on the architectural design that would accommodate these metal roofs. So that was sort of a hangover from our initial work, what we were doing up front, and made it into the draft that you received. So we corrected that in the supplemental to delete that requirement that it meets a certain architectural design and that they could be installed in any architectural design residential areas if it's appropriate. And then with regard to the comment that there's no metal roofs in the city, as I mentioned, there are several along the boulevard. You drive by them, I'm sure. The Starbucks on the corner of Rancho has it. The Sun Plaza down the boulevard has it. There's a medical building on Moody Court that has metal roofing. And then the Los Dos Amigos shopping center has a metal roofing, standing seam. They're all standing seam. So
And
they
they're
are in
doing-
the community.
And they're doing just fine, correct?
Correct.
And aesthetically, I would never notice that unless you pointed those out to me.
We've not received complaints.
Excellent. So we'll close the public hearing here, open up for council discussion. Council members, any discussion? No? Mr. Adam?
So you've determined that this seam metal roof is appropriate for any architectural style?
It would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but we didn't want to limit the ability to review that and consider it as part of the architectural design or an architectural finish for an existing structure or proposed structure.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
When I hear a come from Councilmember Adam, that concerns me. We good, Mr. Adam? You all good? Okay.
Good.
Mr. Engler?
Just to further clarify, currently we have, my first house in Thousand Oaks had a steel roof that simulated S-tile. So we've had those in the town for a long time. The thing we're looking at today is strictly the standing seam, or I think just standing seam. We're not talking corrugated. Standing seam is the only one?
Primarily, the standing seam is the only one. The way the architectural guidelines are worded now, it allows for simulated wood shake. We're going to formally allow for the simulated other materials. So simulated slate, simulated S-tile that are metal. As a matter of practice, some of those roofs have been allowed in the city because you can't tell the difference.
Right, no, the ones that simulate other items, unless you get up there and take a real close look, as you drive by, they appear to be slate, they appear to be concrete tile or whatever.
Yeah, as I mentioned.
This particular style will be a new style that would be introducing into our community.
Right, with the standing seam, that would be a completely new sort of a departure from what we see out there now.
In residential, yeah, we have it in commercial already.
In residential, yes.
Residential.
All righty. Any other questions? All right, let's move for a motion. I'll entertain a motion for 10B, 1, 2, and 3. Any council member want to do it?
Thank you, Mayor. I move 10B, items 1, 2, and 3.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Councilmember Engler?
No.
Councilmember Newman?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam?
No.
And Mayor McNamee?
Yes.
And that motion passes 3-2 with Councilmembers Engler and Adam voting no.
We'll move to item 10C. This is campaign contribution update, continued earlier in the meeting to November 14, 2023. I'll turn this now over to our Assistant City Manager, Ingrid Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next meeting, city council meeting, will take place a week from tonight, November 14th. We have a public hearing on a 5-story hotel at 225 North Moore Park Road. We also have the public hearing on the campaign contributions, as well as a department report on the campus master plan. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Until our next regular meeting, November 14, 2023, we're adjourned.